because I realize that management and leadership is such a key skill set. If there are ways that you can lean in so that you can be more impactful in your work, so that you can better actualize your mission, that it's my responsibility to get as many tools in the bag as possible. So I am going to share my screen and really break down what I have for you today. And I believe what I have for you today will be extremely useful. You get off this Zoom today, you're ready to go in and put the tools immediately into action. So, all right, sharing screen. And wait, I'll go back to my slide. Boom. All right, I'm in the right spot. Now, sharing screen. I want to go to desktop 2. Here we go. Session 4, Management and Leadership Fundamentals. And it's a fun day because we got a lot of stuff to get you excited about. And you know, we are in this journey, and hopefully it's been impactful and useful. And today we're here and we got some other good stuff lined up. So I hope you come back as well. I always love it when people come back. I always feel like so happy. So today I framed it in a very simple way. I want to talk about leadership, give you some insight on leadership. I want to talk about emotional intelligence because for me, that's the superpower around really being impactful in your leadership and management skills, knowledge, and abilities. And so I want to really put shed some light on that emotional intelligence because you all use it in your work. I just want you to be able to harness it so you can be even more impactful. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about leadership versus management and why this is incredibly important. And then in your to-go box, I have just some tips on how you can help your team excel, some insight around group theory, because I think that's super important. I have some insight around how you can motivate your team. I have given you just some, the insider on what are some examples of exemplary leadership, and again, developing your active listening skills, which connects to emotional intelligence, but I'll get there. And also just 2 slides just on tips for managing volunteers, because I know that some of us use a lot of volunteers, and if we can have some greater insight on how we can be more impactful in that way, it'll be helpful. And then just as a reminder, when you see the chat storm, I want you to put your responses in the chat. And also I put the green stars up just so that you could, if you're going back to the deck, you can see what I think might be some of the slides that will be impactful for you. So that's today. And I want to ground us today in just this idea that I want you to remember that, and I've talked about this before, that language enables you to see, not to speak. So I'm putting new language, new terms, new concepts into your toolbox so that you can see differently, so that you can see how to do differently, so that you can see how to be more impactful, that you can see new ways of being, operating, managing, leading. And so that's where I'm grounding us today. So let's break open with this idea of on leadership. And then just a reminder about the ground rules. It is my responsibility to make sure that you get the gifts. So if you have a question, you need additional clarity, you need an example, you put your voice in the space, raise your hand, put something in the chat, whatever it takes, but advocate so that you can get the gifts, because it's my job to make sure that you get them, okay? All right, and so when I talk about leadership, I want you to really think about these 3 areas of leadership. First, this idea of leading self, and this is so important because our leadership is connected to our origin story. It's your leadership story. It's your purpose. It's your vision. That's the thing that drives and refuels and re-energizes and renews you. So we never want to lose sight of leading self is a critical part of leadership. And we'll see how that plays out as well in emotional intelligence. It's amplified in emotional intelligence, but this is beauty. And we can just see that your lived and work experience is part of the power of your impact. The second area is just leading others. And again, your team, the people that you serve, this idea that you can build buy-in and followers, and as well as other leaders when you're in that work of leading others. And again, a nod to emotional intelligence, but we'll get there shortly. And then thirdly, just leading organizations. And it's really just the understanding and a reminder that when we integrate self and others, this is how we are effective in organizations, because organizations are essentially people. And so when we can focus this lead self, lead others, we will be empowered in order to lead our organizations. We can lead our organizations more powerfully, more impactfully. So this is the ground space that I want you to kind of have today. So to give you a reason to believe, I want us to do this quick exercise. And so first, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think of a leader, a boss, a manager, a coach, a teacher, a supervisor, someone who brought out the best in you. And I want you to think about, how they did it. Write down a few reasons of why or how they brought out the best in you. I don't need to know who the person was. That doesn't matter. But what did they do in order, that you felt that they brought out the best in you? And I want you to drop that into the chat. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. The supervisor, leader, boss, manager, the person who brought out the best in you. How were they able to do that? What did they do in order to bring out the best in you? Drop it in the chat. If you want to put a hand up and say some things, it's up to you. What did they do? How did they make you feel? You felt heard. Yes. They set their expectations. They believed in your vision. They saw you. Yes. They understood their positive reinforcement. They pushed you. There was trust built. They inspired you. They supported you. They challenged you. They gave you a voice. I see pushing here, motivating, support is being replicated. Yes, this is amazing. They made you feel human. They cared. They listened, yes, they elevated you. Yes, excellent. Validated. Yes, outstanding. Okay, believed in you. Yes, excellent. All right, good. This is wonderful. Okay, excellent. Good. Okay, good. Encouraged. Yes, never criticized. Excellent. Okay, yes. Okay, good. Okay, all right, I'm sharing my screen. Here's what we know. We know what great leadership looks like because we've seen it, we've experienced it. We know that, and I had the slide prepared before the chat, but you can still see this, that great leaders motivate and inspire us. They see our potential. They're mindful. They're compassionate and encouraging. They can create and maintain this idea of resonance. This is important. Okay. All right, good. Okay. All right, take a deep breath. And now what I want you to do is that I want you to think about a leader, a supervisor, a boss, or a teacher, a coach, a manager who epitomized poor leadership. They caused you to shut down, underperform, or even fail. Now I want you to think about that leader and write down a few responses around why or how, and I want you to note that into the chat. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. And again, this is the leader who brought out the worst in you. Micromanagement, micromanaging is huge. Wow. Yes. Horrible communication, no trust, took everything personal, no support, deserted you. They had to always correct you, said one thing, did something, completely unintelligent emotionally. Ouch. Didn't care, mocked you. Special treatment to others. Lowell was just like all of that. No consistency. Okay, back to the micromanagement. The arrogance that they thought they always knew best. They didn't care about other people's feelings, no accountability. Wow, yes. Okay, good. Critical and demeaning, apathetic about the organization's mission, the nerve, So, okay, yes. All right. Okay. Now, my next slide, I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to speak to it. You know, I want you to think about how you were physically feeling when you were thinking about that good boss. And then I want you to think about how you physically felt when you thought about that terrible boss. Like just thinking about that terrible boss made your stomach hurt. You just like had a flashback to like that instance when they had the audacity to say that craziness to you. You know, you felt something by just thinking about a good boss and a bad boss. When you thought about that good boss, it brought good feelings and you felt like a happiness and you remembered like, you know, this good times and how good you felt in that instance. And when you thought about the bad boss, it physically had this impact on you. Did everybody feel that when, you know, this is a powerful thing. This is a powerful thing. I'm going to go back to sharing my slides. So when you felt differently when you thought about the good boss and the worst boss. And so here's what we also know. We also know that our emotions are contagious. Brain science suggests that our brain is like this open loop system, and we can pick up on these clues and this energy from others. And so just like when we were talking about the good bosses, the good leaders, and this resonance, this positivity was contagious, we have to be mindful that dissonance, that negativity is also contagious. So we have to be mindful of that. And it all goes back to brain science. It's all about the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system tells us this really important information. And all I want you to remember is two things: PEA, positive emotional attractor; NEA, negative emotional attractor. PEA, just some of the details around it. This positivity, positive emotional attractor, it's the parasympathetic nervous system. It's the left prefrontal cortex of the brain. It's where we house our ideas about our ideal self and our strengths. This is where we focus on the future. This is the part of our brain that's filled with hope and possibilities and is very optimistic. And when we want to do some different things, we feel excited about learning and we set goals, and it's just like all goodness. And then there's the NEA, the negative emotional attractor. And that's the sympathetic nervous system. That's the right prefrontal cortex of the brain. This is where we house our gaps and weaknesses, where we focus on the past. And this is where all our fear is clustered, and the problems and the pessimism and anything that we focus on our gaps, and we need to improve the things that we're not good at. And it just feels like a constant critique. And it's this idea, and I'm going to stop sharing just for a second, that if you can tap into brain science and tap into the PEA, the positive emotional attractors, that positivity, that you will exude positivity from others. This idea that you can bring out the best in others by being in a positive space is tremendous insight when you think about management and leadership strategies and techniques. Okay? I'm letting that sit. I'm letting that sit in the air for a second. And you like, Dr. Madden is crazy today. She's talking about if I could just be positive, I can have a greater impact on my team. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right, I'm gonna give you some more receipts. Hold on, let me get back to my screen. Hold on. All right, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about resonant leadership. And great leaders move us through our emotions, and we're tapping into that. And this is the grounds that I want to introduce the concept of emotional intelligence. It's all about the PEA, staying in that positive space and bringing out the best in ourselves and others. That this is how we can really have an impact. So I'm going to ground you with a quote. Maya Angelou says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. We're tapping into the things that we know that we can have impact. And emotional intelligence in this definition is simply, it's the capacity to recognize our own emotions and those of others, and for motivating ourselves and others, and for managing our emotions and managing our relationships. And I'm going to break that down to an even more clear definition, but I want you to give you a reason to believe. And so this is also important. You know, people always talk about IQ. Oh, this person's so smart, you know, this person has this and that and schooled in this way. IQ is just the tip of the iceberg. Emotional intelligence is the depth, the things beneath the surface. If you can tap into your emotional intelligence, this is when you can have such winning space. You know, IQ is just a small component of it. It's the EQ, it's the emotional intelligence that is the vast majority of an impact that you can have. So let's unpack this emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is simply these four components. These emotional competencies, and the emotional competencies are self-awareness and self-management. And then there are these social competencies, and social competencies are social awareness and relationship management. So emotional competencies, how we manage ourselves, self-awareness and self-management. Social competencies is how we manage our relationship, social awareness and relationship management. So before I jump into, I'm going to do a deeper dive. We're going to unpack these four components of emotional intelligence. And I'm just going to pause for a second and see if there are any non-believers in the space, or, you know, anybody seen the power of emotional intelligence work in their leadership and management, you know? Okay, good. I'm seeing some north-south, so that's good. Okay, all right, good. Okay, then let's go ahead and crack the code. All right, sharing my screen back. All right. So, emotional intelligence. Remember, 4 parts. I got the green star on this slide if you want to come back to it. Emotional competencies, again, self-awareness, self-management, social competencies, social awareness, relationship management. You know, really straightforward. And then, and as simple as, I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second. You know, it's simple as self-awareness. You had a emergency home situation that kept you up, you know, through the middle of the night. You got very little sleep. You know, you have a meeting in the morning, and it's going to be a difficult conversation because you need to address some issues about a project that's not getting completed. Now, you know that you already have had very little sleep, and so you might have very limited patience when it comes to that meeting first thing in the morning. So you need to be self-aware, aware that you're tired and you probably have limited patience, and so that you can manage that well when you have this meeting in the morning. So self-awareness, I didn't get a lot of sleep, I'm very tired, I know I'm going to have short patience. Self-management, when somebody makes excuses about why this project didn't get done, I'm not going to go left. I'm just going to hear the person out and be calm about how I'm going to navigate the situation. Self-awareness, self-management. Simple things like that can have tremendous impact on the situation. Makes sense? And these are the things that you do and know, but I'm just putting the language to them so you can tap into them to an even greater extent. Okay. All right. Sharing my slides back again. Okay, so self-awareness is all about, reading your own emotions and recognizing the impact that you can have. It's all about, tapping into your instincts and your decision making. It's all about knowing your strengths and limitations. It's about having self-confidence, a sense of your worth and your capabilities. Self-awareness. Self-management is all about emotional self-control so that you can keep any of those disruptive emotions and impulses under control. You can be transparent. You can be adaptable, where you can demonstrate flexibility when it comes to change and your resilience in overcoming obstacles. It's all about achievement, your drive for improved performance and, delivering your work in excellence. It's all about initiative, and it's all about being optimistic, seeing the upside. And the reason this is important is because the way that the brain is wired, if we can tap into this emotional intelligence, the brain has these two decision-making routes. It's our quick mind and it's our thoughtful mind. That rabbit brain where we're very fast and involuntary and this kind of unconscious emotion, and we give this quick response. We need to, that's good to have, but we need to be more mindful of the conscious thinking where it's slow and it's controlled, and we're very thoughtful about the responses. So we need to tap into that second system. And this is what this idea about having this self-awareness and self-management allows us to do. We can slow down that rabbit brain and amplify that conscious thinking, that slow brain, so that we can manage the triggers better. That's what the self-awareness and self-management does. Okay, again, those are the emotional competencies. And then the second cluster, the social competencies, social awareness and relationship management. Let's talk about those. So social awareness is it's all about empathy, sensing others' emotions, understanding their perspective, taking an interest in, in something pertaining to them. It's also about being aware about the organizations, thinking about the politics at the organizational level or the networks or, what's happening, and as well as service, thinking about how you serve your client and end user and customers, and so this social awareness, I like to think about Maslow's hierarchy. And so this idea in that, you want your team to really have this higher level, ability to operate, yet a social awareness, could it be that someone on your team is not operating at this higher level because there's some type of, food insecurity issue or housing insecurity issue, and so when you're mindful, this social awareness, and you're paying attention to some of the clues, it really gives you the sense of, is something going on at this base level that's causing, it to show up in this different way. And so you're paying attention to some of these baseline needs that need to be in place if you want your team or clients or customers to move up higher on Maslow's hierarchy. And then I saw when I was doing some research that they had modified Maslow's hierarchy, and now it might look like this, but I'm digressing. So social awareness and relationship management. And relationship management is all about inspirational leadership. It's all about using your skills and the tactics and abilities that you have to influence. It's all about developing others. It's all about managing change and leading in a new direction. It's all about conflict management and cultivating relationships of your team, building those bonds and fostering teamwork and collaboration. That's what the relationship building is. So I'm going to take a pause because I've talked a lot. And again, this emotional intelligence, you have the ability to tap into that immediately, and sharpening your emotional intelligence will give you great insight on being a more effective leader and manager. So again, just holding some space to see if there's any questions or thoughts or comments as we kind of continue in the work. But to me, emotional intelligence, this is a powerful, powerful tool. Good. All right. Good. Okay. Now, when we can tap into this emotional intelligence, there's some really interesting things that we can also tap into. And so I want to talk about this next concept. This is connected to this PEA-NEA piece, this whole positive emotional attractor, negative emotional attractor. And again, if we can run this positivity throughout our leadership and management, goals and delivery, it's incredibly powerful. And let me just say this, because I think it's important to say as a reminder, or we don't always know this, when you have a negative interaction, you need 7 positive interactions to get you away from that negative interaction. It's not a 1-to-1. So if you ever said someone's in like this negative funk, it's because negativity is exponential. And so we have to, I tell my clients all the time, protect your joy. You have to find a way to get you back to your good spot. So if you have a negative interaction with someone, cue up you some cat videos, like get yourself back into like this positive space. Look at some pictures of your kids, or that one time you got to go on vacation somewhere. Get yourself back to like a good spot so that you can continue to stay in the PEA. So just remember, you have to stay in this positive space, and negativity is exponential. So get yourself back on your square so that you can stay in that PEA. And when you can really navigate in that PEA, the emotional intelligence becomes incredibly impactful. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management. And then you can also try a tool that's called intentional change. And I'm going to share my screen right now and talk about that tool. I'm giving y'all some doctoral level education today. So, all right, sharing my screen. So I'm going to talk about intentional change theory, and I'm going to give you a grounding for it. So here's the grounding. It grounds itself in this idea of social discrepancy theory. And what it says to us is that we all have multiple selves. We all play multiple roles. And these selves and roles are all about who we are and how we appear to others. And the language for that is, this ideal self, this is the person that we want to be. This is our like best self. The real self, this is who we are. This is our actual self. And then there's the ought self. The ought self is, what people think we should be or ought to be and do. And so there's that ought self as well. And so self-discrepancy theory, it tells us that when our ideal self doesn't align with the real self, sometimes we feel very disappointed or sad or despondent. And then when our ought self, what other people who they think we should be, it doesn't match our real self, sometimes we feel agitated or guilty or distressed or even anxious. And then if we want to really break away from it all, what we really have to do is tap into our passions and our dreams, and then we can break away from the ought self, and then we can move towards that ideal self. And that's very powerful. Let me say some more on that. This ideal self, it's a very powerful place. This is where we house all of our positive images and visions. If we think about the PEA, the ideal self is housed in the PEA. This is such a powerful space in the brain. And sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to have these dreams and engage in our passion. And we need to do that because we need to be able to tap into that ideal self, because we can't inspire passion in others without engaging in our own passion. So just remember, the PEA, the positive emotional attractor, and the NEA, the negative emotional attractor. And again, just as a reminder, when we're focusing on our strengths, the things that we're passionate and excited about, this is when the ideal self and the real self are close together. When we're focusing on our gaps, this is when our real self and our ideal self is farther apart. And if we can practice, tapping into our dreams and our passions, breaking away what other people think we should do, we can do that by having this strength-based focus. We can create this mindfulness and focusing on our strengths and bring that ideal self and real self closer together. Now, the beauty of this is that we're not ignoring the gaps or the weaknesses, but we're not focused on those gaps and weaknesses. we're pulling together the real and ideal self. And the other thing that's very, very important about the way that we can make this happen is that we can create real trusting relationships and networks of encouragement and support. And that's a powerful piece. But to be honest, we first have to start with this ideal self. We need to give ourselves this gift of dreaming. So I want to do a quick little exercise. And I want you to take a moment, and we're not going to have you list everything, but after this, or some point this weekend or sometime this week or next, I want you to finish this exercise. And this exercise is that I want you to list out 27 things you'd like to experience or try or accomplish, in your lifetime. You can think of it as a bucket list. I don't care, whatever it takes for you to get in that headspace. And I want you to put them on like 27 Post-it notes and stick them up somewhere. Some people call it a vision board, 27 things. It could be community, career, personal, relationships, finances, spirituality, health, and I want you to put down 27 things. But right now, I want you to at least put 5 things in the chat. What's on your bucket list? I want you to finish up later, but I want you to drop 5 things in the chat. 5 things that would be on your list of 27 things. What are 5 things that you would like to do? All right, excellent. There's some ownership of properties. There's some travel. All right, there's some high-end scholars on here. Okay, some degree. All right, Alaska, I love that. All right, PhD, I love that. If you need some help, let me know. Good mentor. Okay, own a shop. I love that. Travel to Africa. Yes, love that. Edwin, I've been to so many places. We should chat. Learn a new language. Oh, man. Emotional healing. Yes. New car. Yes. Travel, fitness, better eating. All right, Karen's got 3 off the bat. She already knew. Boom, boom, boom. Own a firm. I love that. Retire successfully. Yes, very nice. A homeowner. Language. Okay, I love this. Like, there's some language. There's some car trends. Happiness. Love that. There's some skydiving. Okay. All right, Freddie, he's got it down. Yes. Excellent. Love that. Yay. I was just in Kenya in December. It's amazing. Consulting team. Yes. Buy a house, get it. Yes. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Travel. Yes. Love that. Retire while. Yes. Amen. Yes. Back to school. Yes. I'm Egypt's amazing. Yes. Finish school. Yes. Do that. Yes. That's beautiful, Irma. Yes. Okay. Lee's got his 5 down right here. Yes. Excellent. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I love this. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Lowe's got her 5 down. That's awesome. Yes. Okay, good. All right, Aaron, I see you. Yes. He's like, travel is 4 of my 27. Excellent. All right. There's power in giving yourself permission to dream. Like, tap into that power. You have like this amazing reservoir of goodness right inside of you that you can tap into. And that helps you stay in the PEA. That helps you to connect to that ideal self. That helps you to be an amazing leader and manager. You got me? All right, I'll pause for a second to see if there's any questions. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Renee, yes, absolutely, yes. Good, Freddie, yes.
Hey, Dr. Madden, I had a question. Is there a specific difference from emotional intelligence and emotional maturity?
Yes, emotional maturity is definitely something a little bit different, but you could increase your emotional maturity by tapping into your emotional intelligence. You know what I mean? So emotional intelligence is very prescriptive in that it's self-awareness and self-management, but you can achieve emotional maturity when you have higher levels of self-awareness and self-management. So I think that there's some connections, but the emotional intelligence also has the social competencies, which you could easily argue that when you have levels of emotional maturity that they also can include, heightened social competencies, so social awareness and relationship management. So I think that there's some definite overlap, but I'm trying to get you to see emotional intelligence as ways that you can tap into that skill and toolbox to help you in your leadership and management skills. But honestly, that doesn't say that if you're not emotionally mature, it probably does contribute to your heightened leadership and management skills. So there's definitely lots of overlap there. Thank you for the question. Yes. Kadrian, if I've mispronounced it, please let me know.
Good morning, it's Keedran.
Kadrian, yes.
Good
Yes,
morning, everybody.
Kadrian.
This is such a beautiful presentation. It's so energetic. I wish all my presentations were like this in training.
Yay.
I wanted to ask what level or what category of emotional intelligence would I need to tap into as a leader when I find that the team that I'm working with or responsible for leading is really relying on my engagement. Like if you notice in the beginning, a lot of us don't like micromanaging. I'm one of them. So I tend to allow my staff to be kind of like independent, but that's created more issues than I've anticipated. And I haven't really been comfortable with enforcing something that I myself personally am not comfortable working with.
Yes.
What category in the intelligence would I tap into, or would I need to strengthen to better manage that?
No, you already have. You have exhibited social awareness. Okay, this is how I grew up, and I'm going to talk about this in a bit. And I love that question, because what you have just demonstrated are several of my slides. I'm going to talk about mental models in the deck, or maybe it's in your to-go bag. But mental models essentially says to us that we are a result of our lived and work experience. And so your lived experience and work experience has demonstrated that micromanagement is bad. It's not great. You don't bring out the best in your team when you do that. But you've also, so that is your lived experience. And however, you are tapping into your emotional intelligence because your social awareness has said, wait a minute, my team's lived experience isn't like my own. They actually need more guidance and direction than I would typically be comfortable with based upon my lived experience. And so your relationship management is going to tell you that I might need to do things a little different than how I would typically do, because I want to bring out the best in my team. And I can tell that they need a little bit more guidance. So self-awareness would be, that's not how I like to get down, but self-management means, let me try and figure out some bridging tools where I can be comfortable giving them some skills and abilities, or leading by example, so they can mimic the way that I lead and manage and have a roadmap. And so I want you to pay attention to the slides to talk about mental models. And I also want you to pay attention to the slides to talk about the 5 examples of exemplary leadership, because I think that those can give you some insight on how you can, better lead and inspire and motivate and develop your team. But you are definitely illustrating emotional intelligence. Now, if you would have said, I don't know what's wrong with my team, I let them, operate independently and they still won't perform, I can't, what more can I do?
I did say that at first. Okay. But then I realized that it's probably something I need to work on. Thank you for that. This was phenomenal. Thank you so much. And thank you for people in the comments too. Thanks.
Excellent. Yes. See, that's a powerful, emotional intelligence is a superpower. So lean into it and leverage it. That's the power. Yes. Renee.
Jennifer, this is amazing. This is awesome. I also want to piggyback on the last question too, is that when you're leading a team that's intergenerational, that, this is a question that really gets brought up, because there's some folks that might be really looking towards somebody to guide them versus somebody that really wants you to, just stay off, I'm fine. I'm a leader. Let me do what I got to do. But it's understanding how you're going to be motivating your team and working with the individual, as an individual with your team, and then identifying as a team, how do we move forward?
Ooh, yes. That intergenerational teams. Oh my goodness. That's when you really need that emotional intelligence, because you got folks who just communicate differently. And so how do you create ways of doing and being and knowledge transfer when you have these multiple generations in the workplace? So the emotional intelligence can be a powerful tool. The fact that you're managing that so eloquently is incredibly inspiring, because you are right. And more we're going to have multiple generations in the workplace. And so we might have to, and this is how you can think about your solution to that. You got to love people the way they need to be loved. If some of your team members need this, this is a part of your emotional intelligence. If some of your team members need that, you can deliver it to that for this group of your team. It's a powerful way. It's in us. And again, we tap into this self-awareness and self-management, relationship, social awareness and relationship management. Those are very, very powerful. Yes. Good. Thank you for that. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, let's get back to these slides. All right, sharing my screen. All right, leadership versus management. This is also super, super important. So I just want to break it down and give you some fundamentals, okay? Because this is, the world according to Dr. Madden. I just think it's just, if we understand the breakdown, we can just do a much better, approach. So let's just break it down in this way. Simply, leaders, they're often concerned with vision and judgment, and a manager might be concerned with mastering routines. The leader might be more of an active visionary, where the manager is really about, adopting goals and attitudes that can help the organization move towards those goals. The leader, often seeks out opportunities and takes risk, where the manager is really adept at problem solving, or what I like to call solution finding, and a leader is very passionate, likely to cause turbulence, where a manager has to work very carefully with people. A leader can see themselves as agents of change, but the manager need to see themselves as, regulators, the ability to move things through. So let's just put it super, super simple. When we think about these different roles, the leaders might set the organizational course, the manager has to set the structure and process. The leader is focused on relationships and people. The manager is focused on structure and tasks. The leader is focused on the future, and the manager is focused on the present. And the leader places an emphasis on organizational purpose, whereby the manager looks at how can we make this happen. So oftentimes we see that managers are often adept at coping with complexity and chaos. They can create order and consistency. They can monitor results. And good leaders are very adept at coping with change. They can tolerate chaos and the lack of structure. They're comfortable delaying this closure so that they can understand things more fully. But if I'm being honest, and in my experience and in my research, it is important that we know how both to lead and manage. Don't try to fit into a leadership box or a management box. It's an and. We need to know how to lead and manage. The real critical learning is knowing the difference between leadership and management, and knowing what the situation calls for. Because we can be leaders, but we might need to manage situations. We can be managers, but we might need to demonstrate leadership. So we need to bolster both those skills, leadership and management skills. And again, just understand what a situation calls for, leadership skills or management skills. And the other thing that's so important is that a reminder that, there are lots of leadership styles that we can tap into. And we're going to talk about Daniel Goleman, who also is the father of emotional intelligence. He talks about there are these 6 primary leadership styles that we have, and we all have our go-to style. But the thing that I'm here to remind you is that sometimes we need to put down our go-to style and pick up a different leadership style based upon the situation. So First, there's the coercive style. This do what I tell you. And sometimes this can create this negative impact, on the climate, but you need it because, you need immediate compliance. You need to have a turnaround. There's some challenge with one of your team members, or maybe your go-to style is more authoritative, and this can be positive in the climate or in the workspace. This is the come with me. And this is the style you would use when you need to set a new direction or a clear vision. You need to mobilize your team. You might take an affiliative style. Then this one is where people come first. This is also gives you a very positive kind of organizational climate and culture. And you use this when you need to build empathy and relationship. Maybe you're trying to heal a rift. You're trying to overcome a stressful situation. Then there's the democratic style. This is the what do you think? And again, very positive on the organization. And this is when you're trying to build consensus or buy-in or get input from your team. Or maybe you need to tap into the pace setting style. And this is the do as I do now. And sometimes this can leave a negative impact on the client, on the culture. And but sometimes we need to have this pace setting style when we're trying to get some quick results, or we're trying to, highly motivate our team, or we're trying to, take some initiative, or you're trying to kind of set this high performance standard. And then finally, there's the coaching style. Try this. This is typically positive on the organizational culture and the impact. And again, this is what style you would use when you're trying to develop others or improve performance, or cultivate some long-term strengths and things of that nature. So I want you to drop into the chat. Where do you think your primary leadership style is? What do you think it is? Is it coercive? Is it authoritative? Is it affiliative? Is it democratic? Is it pace setting? Is it coaching? Are you a do what I tell you? Are you a come with me? Are you a people come first? Are you a what do you think? Are you a do as I do now? Or are you a try this? What's your go-to style? Let me check the chat. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, all right, democratic, lots of democratic, some authoritative, some affiliative coaching. Yep, democratic or coaching, got it. Excellent. Yep, democratic, coaching, affiliative. Yes, excellent. Good. Okay, I can see. Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, good. Good. Okay, this is excellent. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And just to bring it home, what is the most important thing is you need to know what your primary leadership style is, but also know what those other styles are, and know that they are available for your use as the need arises. Knowing that you don't have to be the same leader all the time is very helpful for you, because situation calls for, different styles in order to lead and manage through different issues that your organizations are working through. So, yes. So, and just to remember, when we think about these leadership qualities of great managers, it's honesty, it's communication skills, it's confidence and empathy and focus and creativity and optimism and commitment. These are things that are inherent, and we're just going to shed light and bring them up, and so that you can have a great impact with your team. All right, I'm going to pause, and I am going to take some questions if you have. Yes, any questions or thoughts before I move into more stuff? Thoughts or questions? Okay. Holding a little space for my introverts. Good. Thoughts, questions? Okay. Okay. All right. I know y'all just wanted to save some time for the toolbox. All right, let's crack open this toolbox and let me explain what I got in here for you. All right, sharing my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, so when I think about this, management and leadership fundamentals. One of the things that I think is really important is, as leaders and managers, one of our primary objectives is really, how can we help build our team? And there's a lot of things that that the research suggests, and sometimes this idea of how we can provide feedback can be a challenge, or how we can have difficult conversations is a challenge for many leaders and managers. So here's some insight from researchers that it's telling us that when we tell people, when we think about their performance, it doesn't really help them thrive and excel. When we really focus on the negative, it actually hinders the learning. And as we kind of tried to walk through today, if we want to tap into like the brain and how to get responsiveness from the brain, that negativity gives you a physical response. So, if we're focusing on shortcomings or gaps, it doesn't really enable learning. It shuts it down. And so here are some alternatives that you can use. I'm not suggesting that things don't need to get addressed. I'm saying yes, and here are some other techniques for your toolbox. So the first tip, if you see something that someone on your team is like they're killing it, they're like doing it right, like call that out, like that part right there, that is amazing. It helps your team member recognize what excellence looks like, and when you say that, yes, it just really, reinforces that for your team member, and this allows your team member to really gain some insight. You're highlighting a pattern in work that they're already doing, so they can kind of recognize it, they can kind of anchor it, and they can, recreate it. That's authentic learning. So call it out, that, when you see excellence from your team, like lift it up. That's a powerful way to reinforce continued behavior in that way. All right. Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, I see you in the tip. Yes, Sarah did this yesterday in my supervisor, and I could just see her glow a bit. Yes, I'm telling you, it's a powerful play. Look at that. Look, all this and no tuition. Okay. All right. Number 2, share your personal reactions. And so, what did you experience? What was this moment of excellence that caught your attention? And people believe you when you can tell them how it made you feel. So, you're sharing your truth. This is how that came across for me. This is what that made me think. Or did you see what you did right there? That part was, and so when you give this detail, you're not judging or fixing, you're just simply reflecting on the impact that the person just made. And that's as you saw it through your own perspective. And so that kind of diminishes the judgment or the rating, and it just becomes more impactful. Yeah, this is what it made me think. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Oh, another chat response. But how do you correct things that are not as they should be without being negative? So I'm going to get to the feedback piece. So Karen, just give me a heartbeat on that. I got a slide for you. Okay. All right. So, and these other slides can be helpful too. Here we go. Third tip, try rephrasing things a little bit. So here's some examples. Instead of, can I give you some feedback? Because I say that. Try, here's my reaction. Just a little tweak up, and then it's like, sometimes feedback, you're like, uh-oh. Instead, here's my reaction. Instead of, good job. Okay, yay. But really, what did I learn? Try, here are 3 things that really work for me. What was going through your mind when you did them? You're really anchoring the person to like this behavior, or, the work that you want replicated and duplicated. Instead of, here's what you should do. Try, here's what I would do. Lacking the judgment, it's just a simple reframe. Instead of, here's where you need to improve. Try, here's what worked best for me, and here's why. Yes. Okay. Instead of, that didn't really work. Try, when you did X, I felt Y, or I didn't get that. It comes across different. Instead of, you need to improve your communication skills. Try, here's exactly where you started to lose me. I use that one a lot. Instead of, you need to be more responsive. Try, when I don't hear from you, I worry that we're not on the same page. I might use that at home. Instead of, you lack strategic thinking. Try, I'm struggling to understand your plan. Instead of, you should do X in response to a request for advice, you try, what do you feel you're struggling with? And what have you done in the past that's worked in a similar situation? You're just putting it back on the person to kind of give you some feedback and feed forward and thoughts. Okay, I'm going to pause and let's have some conversation, see what you think. All right, I think I already have okay, yay, good. Thank you, Stephanie. All right, what about those tips? What do you think about those tips? Useful, not useful? Calling things out, reframing things, giving your personal perspective on things. Uh-oh, Lowell, what you got?
So I want to make a comment about giving, positive feedback to your team when they do something good. I would caution you, don't, like, sometimes you want to motivate the team and you don't want to reinforce bad behavior, because sometimes just giving them a rah-rah when they've done mediocre doesn't work. I know for me, it doesn't work at all, because I think you're patronizing me and you're not helping me at all. Me being on the receiving side.
Yes.
So that I would, talking about my experience, I would rather you give me positive, what I did right, what the team did right when we did something right, even though it's a long process or a big project. Along the way, tell us what we did right, because if you tell us what we did right and it wasn't quite there, it's going to impact down the road. And some of those phrases I'm definitely going to be using in the future. Definitely. Most definitely.
No, it's so true. Even there's data that talks about, even in the classroom, that if you can imagine you take a test, go back to those classroom days, you take a test and you think you got the answer right, or maybe you got it right. And so there's this kind of, there's this research that says if you can provide immediate feedback for the student, they will, learn better. So you imagine you take a test, you get immediate feedback, and then they know, okay, that's wrong, and then they can learn from it. And so they design these exam kind of strips. You remember like the Scantrons where you would do your test and you'd scratch off the number, A, B, C, D. So they built these strips, and instead you had to scratch off. So you had your test and you thought the answer was A, you scratch off A and it would be correct or incorrect. And so the thinking was a way that you can provide this immediate feedback. And then my students were like, we're taking the lottery exams, because it's all scratch off. So I was like, you can't win. But there's power in the baseline knowledge of providing that feedback. And Lowell, I think that you're right in that we see this in our performance evaluations and performance management measurement, where we have this annual review. And I know this is not the course for that, but it's like a terrible idea to do annual reviews. You need to check in with your team all the time so that they know when they're on the right track. You don't want to, in an annual review, talk about, well, that project that you were working on 3 months ago, you were really not doing a great job there. Like, it would have been nice to know where maybe I could have made some corrections, course corrected, or had done some things differently so that I could have a different impact, a different outcome. So, you know, that feedback and feed forward, I think is very powerful. So thank you. Jason, you have a hand and you've been so engaged. I love it. Thank you so much.
Hi, so I work with a lot of youth. So right now, as I'm looking through the toolbox, I find myself in the process of wanting to apply the tools and a positive, aspect, as well as realizing that they might not have a lot of experience maybe in decision making.
Yes.
So sometimes I find myself stammering and figuring out kind of, the proper approach. Is that pretty common?
I think that that people are learning along the way, and that I think that if you come from a place of authenticity, young people can smell that on you, so if you're stammering from a place of authenticity and you're trying to just figure out what's best for your team, because it's likely that you love the work that you do and you see the impact that you can have on the young people, I think that they'll be able to sense that too. So I would say that in your journey of being authentic, you stammer along the way, then that's just your style. And I think that what the young people can see is that, being an adult doesn't mean that you have it all figured out. It means that we all should be lifelong learners. And if you just have your eyes on the prize and your heart in the right place and a commitment to like learning the best way, man, that's as good as it gets, I saw another hand, but I missed the name. So.
Hi, Dr. Madden. Yeah,
Okay,
that was me. Thank you so
Yay.
much for sharing. I'm really enjoying the
Yay.
training. I think for sure, like the reframing, right? And the phrasing things differently, like it'll certainly take me some time to get used to that. But to your point, I think it for me what that does, right? Not only does it show like a more sophisticated way of approaching, of thinking through things, like it also puts me in looking at some of those like the juxtaposition, it also puts me like it puts us together, right? As opposed to me telling someone, hey, you should have done this, right? This other way, like reframing it in the examples that you showed, it sort of puts me and that other person together, more closely together. And it, for me, it kind of says without saying, like, we're gonna work this through together, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can I support you in doing X, Y, and Z, right? And I think in thinking about the PEA, right?
Yeah.
I think it supports that it supports those attitudes and that approach. And yeah, I think for me it's helpful and to be able to connect it in that sense, and we'll certainly practice the reframing of how I talk about things with my staff.
Excellent. Love that. All right. Jesus is picking up what I'm putting down. That's a good day. Good. Other thoughts or comments or questions? This is tough work, and again, working with young people, they can smell you out. So you got to just come for real. Good. Okay. Holding a little space for my introverts. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. All right. Moving forward. All right. Sharing my slides again. Okay. All right. Okay. I put this in the deck because I think it's important, and you can go back and look at this information in more detail, but I just thought it would be important to talk about group theory, only because we don't often think about about this dynamic, but if you understand this dynamic, it's incredibly helpful. So the stages, group theory talks about there being these 5 stages of group development. The 5th stage is just adjourning. That's when the team breaks up. And so if we understand these stages of group development, it can be very, very helpful for us. So there's that first stage of forming, and this is like we're bringing the group together. Then that second stage is the storming. And so there's a lot of conflict that happens. And then the third stage, this is when you start to get to the norming. And so this is starting, the group is finally starting to work together well. And then you can get to the performing stage. And this is when you have a really functional group or team. Now, the reason that I think it's important, and I'm going to walk through these steps and show you what's on the slide in just a second. But the reason that I think that having this little insight, around the, group development is just because people think that they can bring the team together and then the team's going to be fantastic. And when the team doesn't gel immediately, then there's worry that comes or anxiety. And you're like, oh, maybe I didn't get the right players but we really just need to understand that there are stages of group development. And if we understand those stages, then we can have more patience with the cultivation of the team. Like if you know ahead of time that your team needs to go through the forming, the storming, norming, and only then the performing stage, you can give more grace and have more patience with the team development. And having that insight is incredibly insightful, because it gives you, again, that ability to offer grace. Yes. And yes, you'll get the slides always. All right. So let me just quickly give you some tips that you can look back at these slides later and get a better sense of those stages of team development. So sharing screen. Okay. So again, the first stage is the forming. So in this first stage, there's like lots of confusion, uncertainty. The team is just potentially getting to know each other or a new team member. They're trying to feel each other out. And so you're really just trying to get oriented to the task. So there's a lot of dependency necessary. So people are all over the place. And then you move to stage 2, the storming part. And this is, you're organizing around the task. There's going to be some conflict, disagreements over what the priorities are, and tensions, leadership struggle, and some hostility sometimes. Cliques come together in this storming stage, but you go through it so that you can then get to stage 3, which is the norming stage. And this is when you start to build consensus. And, the leadership is finally accepted and roles are established and data and information is starting to flow. You're able to kind of start achieving some of the tasks. There's some cohesion being cultivated so that you can finally get to stage 4, the performing. Like, this is excellent. This is when you can find the solutions and you can be interdependent and you're having great performance and people are flexible and open and helpful, and then after all of that, you get to the 5th stage, which is like, okay, it's over with. You're like, leaving the project team is breaking up and, or, you know how that feeling is when you finish watching a whole season and you in like the show hole, you're like, that's it in the season. So you have those things with your team as well. So this idea of going through these stages, or understanding that group development has these stages, it really allows you to just, give some grace to your team development and group development efforts. Mm-hmm. All right. Any thoughts or questions about that? Comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if I heard that this was answered already, but is there like I'm pretty sure there isn't, but like a time frame of when these phases happen? Like, when do you know when to throw the towel, sort of thing?
So again, this idea of if you think about, so that's a fair question. and the idea is that you're looking for these components that happen in the stages. So you can imagine the early start is the forming. And then, sometimes the storming piece can take some time. But if you start to see this leadership emerging, you're getting to that next stage. For example, if you start to see some stability in those roles or trust starting to be built, you can see you're moving into that next stage. And sometimes you can influence some of these stages, like you might do some team building or like some other activities where you're trying to cultivate or bolster some of this work so that you can help move your team into that next phase. Is that helpful? But you're right that there aren't like set time, and sometimes groups can move through these stages quickly, or maybe you're adding in a new dynamic into an existing team, so there's still that work that has to happen. Maybe there's the the forming piece that might take a little bit longer, just so that there's clear about how the new person fits in the team, and then the other stages can move kind of quickly. Mm-hmm. Okay, Andrea.
Hello. Thank you, Jennifer, for all your information. This all has been very, very helpful. Yes. Center has been very lovely. I just wanted to comment or had a question on the stages. So when you have a team who's fast, steadily growing, and team members are always moving in and things like that, and I feel like that click formation is very prevalent in a lot of the time. So how would you say that you would develop more team building activities, or like any suggestions on how to really bring these groups together, since we all focus on the same mission and vision to really help our communities in the best way that we can? So I just would really love to hear like your feedback or any suggestions that you had to create an even stronger team, so we have an even bigger impact and help anyone in need. Thank you.
You know what? I really appreciate that question, because it's a real question. You're like, we out here trying to get the work done, and it's a lot. So in addition to, like, we think about strategies for this kind of getting to know and building this like high impact team. I don't do that session here, but here's something that I think is super, super helpful. It is, I'm going to share a screen, and then I want you to, here's a free tool. I'm all about the free tools. So let me see if I can pull this up. All right. So I'm going to drop the link, and oh no, oh, 2 seconds. Okay, hold on. Let me try this way differently. Hold on. All right. Sharing screen again. Here we go. Okay, so here's a tool I want you to go to, 16personalities.com. I'm gonna drop this in the chat. This is a free tool, and I'm putting it in the chat right now. And so what 16 Personalities does is that it can help. It's like a free Myers and a new age Myers-Briggs sort of assessment. And so you go to 16 Personalities, send it to your team. You have them take this pretty quick assessment, take the test, boom. It gives you these 16 questions. You get your results, and it's like your ENTJ, and it also gives you like if you're an architect or a logician or a protagonist or a defender or an entrepreneur, and you can get some insight on who is on your team. So for example, I like my favorite kind of concept is around introversion versus extroversion. Jamie's taking this test. And this idea of, if you have team members who are introverts versus team members who are extroverts, they process information aloud. And introverts, they really like to think about their responses before they have a solution. So when I know I have an extrovert on my team, for example, I'll go to them and I'll say, well, what do you think about such and such? And then we'll have a conversation and I'll get that person's best thinking because they're an extrovert. And when I have an introvert on my team, I'll say, I'll ask the same question. What do you think about such and such? I have a meeting and then I need to take a phone call. I'll circle back with you at 2:00 and let me know what you think. And so in this way, I can bring out the best in my introverted team member because I have given that person the ability to be more reflective about their response. And so when you understand the different dynamics of your team, then you can use that to your advantage and you know how to better approach the team member because of, some insight that we can take from these personality assessments. So, and these are just fun ways for teams to get to know one another. And I think having things like this, can be helpful. Secondly, I think also those, the which is coming up very soon, those, exemplary leadership, those 5 kind of insights can also be important for you because and then the third piece that I would say, and we will talk about this next time, I think, because we do design thinking. I love design thinking. I'm a design thinker. And one of the tools that we'll talk about in that session, I'll just talk about today because it's important that you have what you need today. That sometimes we are only looking at the issues at the surface, and so we're going to talk about a tool called the problem tree analysis. And what the problem tree analysis reminds us, it gives us the tree metaphor so that we can look at the issues in the leaves, we see them, and we need to also try to go to the root of the issues and solve issues at the roots. We need to be mindful of how they're showing up. But if we only address things at the leaves, we're just putting a Band-Aid on things. We need to get at the root of things. And so the tree reminds us, it's like, is this a leaf issue? Have I gotten to the root of this? And so we learn how to try to better understand so that we can get at the root issue and solve the challenge at the roots. Because when you can solve the challenge at the roots, you address the challenge. If you only address issues in the leaves, you're not doing anything to really remedy the challenge. So those are 3 kind of techniques that I think that you can use. One we haven't discussed fully, but it's coming up. Using some of the tools and techniques like that Myers-Briggs, looking at some exemplars in leadership, and also making sure you're getting at the root issues of your challenges so that you're solving at the roots so that you can actually address the challenge. Andrea, I hope that's helpful.
Yes, very much. Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Wonderful. All right. Good. Yay. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions? Did I miss something in the chat? Yep. Design think is coming. Okay, good. Yes, language enables you to see, not to speak. So when you see these tools, it allows you to understand and see things differently and really like bolster and build your leadership and management, skills. These are incredibly powerful. So yes, absolutely. Good. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Any other questions? The free 5 love language questionnaires to help build team. Okay, good. Yes. Okay. I have to tell you, I love the love languages for personal, but I don't know about the love languages at work. Like, how does touch work at work? I'm not sure, but these are just questions I have. I'm kidding. I'm sure something impactful in there. Or maybe it's a high five. Like that could be it. Yeah.
That guy needs a handshake every day. Just
yes.
Every day, everything's cool. We're good. We're on the same page. All right.
That's right. You give some dap handshake. Okay. I can. All right, Treasure. Thank you for raising your hand, putting your voice in this space. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, for the physical touching, I teach organizational diversity, and we reach on the love languages. And so yes, high fives, the fist bumping, the just the more like closer in as HR will allow, but that physical contact really can be translated into the space. And so it's so hard, but it's still so very vital for people that need that we call them like the dog personality. They need that little pet, and it really just motivates them in the workspace. And so yeah, it's a valuable, Jason, super valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I was giving Jason a hard time. But there's absolutely ways that we can approach. That's right. Yes. We can figure out ways to make it work. So I love that. Yes. Good. Wonderful. So Jason Treasure gave you some love that is a powerful way, and then she validated. That's right. Good. Other thoughts or questions or comments? Okay. All right. Good. All right. Going back to the chat. Going back to sharing my screen. Okay. Slides. All right. Just a couple more things. Okay, so this idea of motivation orientation is really, really important. So Karen, this is back to your earlier question about the how do you address some of that negative piece? So we're going to get there in a second. But first, I want to level set you. This is a diagram from my doctoral program. And I just think understanding mental models is crazy important. And what a mental model simply says is that it says we're a result of our lived and work experience. But what it means is that as people, we have these observable data and experience, and we select the data from what you observe, then we add meanings to that data, then we make assumptions based upon those meanings, then we draw conclusions based upon those assumptions, then we adopt beliefs based upon those conclusions, and then we take actions based upon those beliefs. And I love this idea of a ladder, because it's just like, for me visually, you put a ladder on the ground, and it just helps me to see that this is a person's mental model. They're taking these actions based upon their beliefs, based upon what conclusions that they've drawn, based upon the assumptions that they've made, based upon the meanings that they've added, based upon the data and experiences that they've had. And so if you've ever heard the saying that you need someone to think outside of the box, this is the actual box. And the reason thinking outside of the box is so difficult is because it's reinforced. Like it's like the rungs of a ladder. It's steeped in your lived experience. And if you want people to think differently, to make different assumptions, to draw different conclusions, to adopt different beliefs, to take different actions, you have to stretch out that ladder, and they have to have new experiences and interact with different people so that they can come to these different conclusions and adopt different beliefs and take different actions. And so whenever I interact with a person who is very different, actions or different beliefs or different conclusions or make different assumptions than I do, I just simply say, oh, that person has a different mental model. And it frees me up significantly. I don't have to try and figure it out. I could just completely understand that their ladder is in a different soil. And so if I want to, have that influence on that, I need to stretch out that ladder. And that means, create some new experiences for that person. But this is a powerful concept for me, just because it just frees me up and just says to me that, I don't have to understand it, because it's simply the mental model is different. And I think that this is a powerful visual and just great insight, so that we can kind of move forward. And just thinking that if we want people to have different experiences, we have to stretch out their ladder so they can have some different experiences, so that they can do things differently. All right, any thoughts or comments or questions on the mental models before we move forward in the motivation orientation? Good, okay, yes, excellent. Okay, good. Thanks, Irma. Yay. Okay, good. All right, so on to motivation orientation. Sharing screen. All right, so, and then we can, when we understand that piece, then we can let some of that go and really think about how we can better motivate our team. And so I like to diagnose some performance challenges based upon this idea of, is it ability or motivation? Because if we can understand that, boy, we can be more impactful. So things like, is the task difficult that we've asked, performance around? Is the person capable? Is the person trying really hard? Is there some improvements being made? And the reason that we're trying to, better understand the performance challenges is because I want you to start thinking about formula as a performance as a formula. And so if we think about performance equals ability times motivation, that simply is saying, ability is aptitude, training, resources. Motivation is desire and commitment. And so if we can better understand, is this an ability issue or is this a motivation issue? Because if it's a motivation issue and you decide to send your team member to training, you've just wasted your resources, because it's not an ability issue, it's a commitment issue. So you have to address the performance issue differently when you can better understand if it's an ability issue or a motivation issue. But we have to take the time to understand performance as a formula, ability times motivation, so we can have greater insight on how to have an effective and impactful solution. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got in the chat. All right. Yes. Excellent. Yes. Ability or motivation. Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Thoughts or comments? Other thoughts or comments? Okay, Lowell, I see you.
So what I like about what you just went through, I could have used this from one of my managers. If one of my managers would have managed me this way, they would have gotten more out of me. So at the top of we were talking about what were the good managers and what were the bad managers. So the bad manager definitely couldn't connect the dots. They could have got a lot more out of me, because at one point I just like, shut down, fire me, I'm out. And which is no reflection on my ability, because I could do the job if you told me what the job was.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to use that as I manage my team. I manage a volunteer team at church where I'm a volunteer myself. So I'm not a paid employee, but I am a leader. So these are some of the tools that I could use, because even though that I'm retired and I'm out of the corporate world, that doesn't mean I can't learn something new. So everything that's being taught here, I'm like, oh man, that's something I can use in this part of my life or another part of my life.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Sierra Health is giving y'all some mini MBAs. I'm just telling you.
That is the truth. Really, I was just texting one of my girlfriends saying, I'm so glad I'm retired. I can't believe how much information is being given here. It's like you don't realize you're getting it until maybe after it's gone. Like, oh man, I should have, man. But okay, I'm done fangirling.
That's awesome. Good. Yeah, Freddie. Yes.
Hey, Dr. Madden. So I'm wondering if you could say more about differentiating between recognizing if something's an ability issue or a motivation issue.
Yes. So if for example, someone on your team isn't performing, for example, someone not doing the work you've asked them to do, and then you're thinking about how you can have an intervention, a viable intervention. Like your assumption could be that you know, they're not they don't have the skill set, or they need different skill sets to do the job. You might just not even think about it, you know, like your default, you know, response is if my team's not performing, it's because I need to build their capacity. But sometimes that is true, but sometimes it's not true. And so we need to really analyze what is the challenge. This is where you can tap into your emotional intelligence skill set, this kind of social awareness, you know, and relationship management. And it's really that the person just they hate the project that they're working on. You have the right person in your organization. And I'm referencing a good to great issue. And a good to great, you don't have to read the book. It's a great book, even though some of those businesses have gone out, but there are some key components to good to great. And it just says the top line of that book is that not only do you have to get the right people on the bus, but you have to get the people on the bus in the right seats. And so when Lowell talked about, I have this great skill set, but you know, my manager was not tapping into it. She was in the wrong seat. You know, she cared about the organization, but she wasn't doing the work where she could, you know, that would going to bring out the best in her, that her manager wasn't able to bring out the best in her. And so what this performance assessment tries to help us to do is to make sure that we're putting the people in the right seats. And so the person could be underperforming because you're not utilizing or leveraging their strengths in this particular work, or so they're not committed to the work, or they don't have a desire to do this particular work. And so sometimes we can put someone in the right seat where they can lean into their strengths, because, and I fully believe this, we can only be distinctive in our areas of strength. If you know what your strengths of your team are and you let them lead with their strengths, this is a powerful value proposition for your organization as well as that individual. But if we assume that we know what the challenge is without trying to better understand, diagnose what that challenge, sometimes we can come up with the wrong solution. Is that more helpful, Freddie?
Yeah, definitely. You actually unpacked that really well. So thank you for that.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Excellent. Good. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Because if you're thinking it, others are. So I appreciate the questions and you all putting your voice in the space. Yeah. Good. Good. All right. Helps avoid burnout, high turnover rates. Thanks, Natalie. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Good. Now, the other thing that I want to speak to, this is another support for Karen. Now, not all leaders, managers like this, but I personally like a feedback sandwich. You know, a feedback sandwich is another way to give powerful, impactful feedback that has some negativity in it. So it's a sandwich because you start with a positive, then you address the issue that you're trying to address, the negative piece, and then you end with a positive, like a sandwich. So, you know, I see that I can tell you've been working hard on getting this project done, you know, spending a lot of your time and energy and, you know, committed to having an impact working with the kids, you know, whatever the critique is, you know, but you need to also bring your other team members to let them know what your approach is so they know what they need to do in order to support that vision. But and then you end with a positive. But the fact that you have invested all of this time in trying to see it through, you know, encourages me that we're going to resolve this situation or have a positive impact. So you start with the positive so that the person's paying attention. You can put in that critique because you've created this sort of like safe space for you to make that critique. And then you end in the positive, you know, just as a way to kind of keep you moving forward. And so the feedback sandwich is is a technique that you can use if that's what you aspire to. Good. Okay, good. Okay. I will share my screen. I just think one more. All right. All right, sharing screen. And here we go. All right, so the 5 practices of exemplary leadership. So 5 things: model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. I just put these in here because I just think that that if you can see ways to connect back to these exemplars, it's really powerful. And so we started off with, we don't want to micromanage, but maybe our team needs some additional support. So maybe we model the way. And so again, you can create standards of excellence and set an example that your team can follow. I think that this is a powerful way when your team sees you doing something and then they can mimic those things. It is a powerful way to lead and manage. And this is a leadership exemplar. The second one, again, inspiring a shared vision. I always say what people co-create, they sustain. And when you can, create this shared vision, people will really support that vision when they see themselves in it, when they see their hand in it. It's really incredibly powerful. Challenging the process, again, looking for opportunities to change the status quo, a willingness to take some risks, and understanding that risk can involve failure, but instead of seeing it as failure, seeing it as a learning opportunity or a win. You're not failing, you're winning and you're learning. And when you can change up that perspective in that way, it's very powerful. This enabling others to act, again, just being involved and inspiring and fostering collaboration, making a person feel capable and powerful is just such a powerful way and impactful way to lead organizations. And then finally, encouraging the heart. So just make people feel like heroes. That's such a powerful tool. And when you stay in that PEA, that positive emotional attractor, like that's when you have your most advantage of making that happen. So I'm going to pause here and see what you think about those five exemplars. Any thoughts or comments or questions? Just simple things that you can tap back into and see. Good. Okay, good. Okay. More details on the slides that you can take a peek at. Yes, Jason.
Sometimes I've gotten into maybe, I don't know, the gray area of saying that I need to make extra large changes, right? Rather than small ones.
Mm.
And like just currently where I just recently made a change was making breakfast in the morning. Because I have a teenager who needs a little bit more help and motivation to get to school. And listening to some trainings and understanding that maybe that there's a food deficiency that they're encountering might help motivate. I know he's able, but to get him motivated, it's just a experiment right now, but
yes,
challenging myself not to look at like a big dramatic change has really been something that I need to encounter, so that I say, hey, small changes are just sometimes benefit bigger than bigger changes, Is that a fair statement?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And what you did was you demonstrated an example of the problem tree analysis. So on the leaves it looked like this, but at the root you're like, wait a minute, maybe a healthy start to the day, not only the food, but the connection that you're making over food. Like that's so powerful. Like this kind of moment that, it might be just you two. That's like a powerful approach. And you got at the root issue versus just what was on the surface level, So a combination of those. And again, emotional intelligence. self-awareness, I need to do something different, and self-management. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's just a subtle change that I think can have an impact. Social awareness. Let me figure out what's going on at this deeper level. Relationship management. I'm going to invite in and just make breakfast and see if I can have an approach that can change that output. So you're combining these skills to have to be the architect of your own fortune. I love that, because yes, we are the architect of our own fortune or misfortune. Yeah. Good. Yes, staying at PEA. Absolutely. Rudy got it. Yes. Other thoughts or questions? Okay. I won't go through them, but I put 2 more things in your toolbox, and I'm just going to tell you what they are. And then I'm going to just let you ask some questions for this last bit of the piece. Wait, hold on. Okay, so in your toolbox, I just have some tips for developing your active listening skills, because active listening is an incredible tool, and the slides define what active listening is and what it is not, how you can sharpen your active listening skills, and how you can respond when it comes to active listening, how it's important that you reflect. And again, in your active listening skills, this ability to restate or paraphrase to confirm that you're listening, as well as to clarify and summarize. So if you want to heighten your active listening skills, in your toolbox, there is some information. And then finally, just a couple of slides about managing volunteers, just understanding the different types of volunteers, motivations around why people volunteer, and some best practices about volunteer programs. So that's in the toolbox as well. So next time, we're going to do some design thinking for the next 2 sessions, and we're going to wrap up the 3rd session with strategic planning, my favorite thing. So all good stuff to come. And I'm going to make sure to hold some space and answer some questions. So these last few minutes, I'm happy to take any additional questions, because we covered a lot today. So, all right, Natalie, how do you suggest we can share these ideas and practices with other organizations that we collaborate with and be taken seriously? Invite them to the training. Tell them to watch the training, I think that, or demonstrate, model the way, take one of the exemplars, show, when they see how you making it go, they're like, well, what they doing over there? We need to get some more of that so that we can, have our organizations. Natalie, go ahead. I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
good seeing you.
Hi, yes. This is great. I'm so sorry that I'm late, because this is my jam right now. Like I literally just made like a 10-minute TikTok about these theories, and then we got this Dr. Jennifer Madden saying these things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these ideas need to be spread. And my whole challenge right now, I implemented something very kind of the grassroots level of what you're talking about with a team, and it worked, and it was amazing, and it was leveraging strengths, and it was done in such a way that when feedback needed to happen, it was implemented, and the team just became so solid. However, we work in a greater community. We're Auburn Hip Hop Congress, so we're looked at as cute. Oh, they do artsy things. And the truth is, I really want to share this, because we can make things beautiful in our bubbles. Our team can be solid and we can accomplish things, but when we go outside of these areas and it doesn't feel the same, it doesn't feel as safe. People aren't valued at the table. Strengths aren't leveraged, and you're in a collaboration and you're not being valued. And we're busy. Everybody's busy. Yes. So let you, utilize me in these proper ways, and man, we could run so much more effectively. But I think a roadblock is being taken serious. But I think you're right, sharing this, and I didn't know that it existed outside my own head. So this was just really very exciting. Anyway, sorry, I've been like, yeah, I'm teaching at the same time.
No worries.
Fangirling over here. The kids probably think I'm crazy, but
Not in the least bit. And you know what? Those are valid ideas, like and fundable. You can get a corporate sponsor or a foundation to say, hey, you see what we're trying to do in this collaborative. If we could just, infuse some joy into this work through sharing some of these techniques, we could really have a much greater impact. You can make a logical argument, a compelling argument that could motivate someone to write the check to help educate the collaborative or build this common language, common learning experience, build additional trust so that all together this collaboration can have greater impact, Excellent. Yes, absolutely, Jason. Good. Yay. I know this is the stuff I teach my graduate students. It's important stuff. So, y'all need the tools too. So, yay, Melissa. Yes. Excellent. Other thoughts or questions? This is your time. Okay. Thank you all so much for hanging in. It's always a 2-hour training. You gotta, and we did pretty good. So other thoughts or questions or comment? What advice would you give to a young leader leading older people? Ooh, Naeem, that's a real question and a real challenge. And what is so interesting when I think about an intergenerational work is that it actually takes me back to this idea that we are more alike than we are different. And that's a quote from, a famous author. And it's all about when you're a young leader, it's all about this demonstration of respect, and it's all about this tapping into your emotional intelligence, meaning that you have this self-awareness. I'm a young person, self-management. I want to always be respectful in my delivery of things, and seeing where that get is. What can these more experienced people deliver, and what can you deliver as a young person? And typically, sometimes it's a technology exchange, sometimes it's a wisdom exchange. But when people know where their strengths are, and it's a really powerful way to navigate through that process. So as a young leader leading people older than you, your tone is going to be incredibly important. Like how you come across is going to be incredibly important. And when you say that you acknowledge this idea of acknowledging and this yes and, yes, and we could try this approach, or we are going to do it this way because this is what it can mean. This is how it can be impactful. Those are the techniques and tips that's going to be important for you to lean into. Does that make sense for you?
It does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And everybody likes a respectful young man. You know what I mean? So like lean into that sweet spot. And you can get older people to do anything. They'll fight for you. You know what I mean? But when you come across as like a know-it-all, oh, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. So your tone's going to be very important. How you approach situations, that respectfulness, it buys you so much in that space,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good. All right, good. All right, let's see. Got more questions. Okay. Yay. Okay, so the good to great, how do you get people on the right seat? How do I know where the right seat is for folks? Or is it trial and error, or is this a strategy to seat assignments? Kelsey, I love that. What I suggest is that you look at the strengths of your team. We can only be distinctive in our areas of strengths. And if you lead by strengths and decide where you want the people on the bus based upon where their strengths are, that is when you make the best seat selections. You know, that's when you make the best. It's easier if to stay in the PEA when you're leaning into your strengths. It's just a powerful value proposition. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, good. All right, Lowell's making a book suggestion. Good. Okay, good. Okay, good. Excellent. Same goes for someone who is leading teams but is new to the nonprofit world. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Is it important for as folks who have been doing this work for a while to make space and be intentional on building next generational leadership opportunities and not wait to pass the baton, but rather share and hand it off? Renee, that is such a powerful question. And honestly, you know, in the before times, we may not have thought about the importance of you know, having a transition plan or thinking about succession planning. But post-COVID, I think that we all are aware of, you know, things can happen unexpectedly. And I think that it's powerful to do some cross training and identify future leaders in the organization, because it only helps the organization, you know, in its sustainability and its tenacity. So I absolutely agree that there is understanding what's the strategy for, you know, leadership transition and growing up and building up leaders is a powerful positioning for your organization. You know, and what can happen is that, you know, when I think about also the challenges that, you know, this up and coming generation might have, is that you know, many think like 2 years on the job feels like a long time, you know, and if they don't see themselves in the work or part of the work or their handprints on the work, co-creating that vision and that future, you know, maybe they feel like they might want to be somewhere else. But when you can identify, you know, and build up and cultivate, it feels like they're learning different parts of the organization. So it feels like a new experience, even though it might be the same organization. So I personally love that strategy.
And I think I say that, Dr. Madden, because it's like the struggles that we have with management and leadership and communication. There's so much of a gap between age that we don't really understand that unless we thread it within our organization of providing that, you know, building the bench so our young leaders can also not only lead, but then also model to folks who have been doing this work for a while. Because I come from a generation that we didn't have that. We didn't have the baton until we actually demonstrated that we had the leadership skills, or we were very vocal on wanting to have the baton and leadership skills, or even, you know, waited for somebody to retire for some of us to step into some of these leadership roles without having the proper training. And so I say that because it's more of like, you know, if we're able to model that, especially for the upcoming generation, then we're able to kind of look at leadership and management in a different way. So true. I mean, amen. If I say amen, you know I mean it, right? You know, you done hit something really powerful. Yes, absolutely. All right. Okay, Shira, pass it to you to say goodbye. Thank you all. I'll see you in a couple weeks. And we're going to do some design thinking. I got a whole bunch of good stuff in store. Oh, my goodness. Don't miss this one. Don't miss it.
Thank you, Dr. Madden. And you don't want to miss it. I went ahead and put the link to register in the chat if you haven't already. Don't want to keep you all from lunch, but we certainly appreciate each and every one of you being here today. And the level of engagement was really great to see as well. Hope that you all have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.